Well, good evening, all.
Good evening,
First,
sir.
Evening.
first of all, I would like to begin with a word of prayer. I'll now turn it over to our chaplain, Mr. Ken Mortimer.
Good evening, gentlemen. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, the men of your church gather together in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, to thank you for the gift of fatherhood and discuss how it may be further enhanced. So, Father, we ask you to bless our panelists and these discussions and give us a fruitful outcome so that this nation would be better off because of godly fathers. We also come offering our petition on behalf of the Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos Islands during this global health crisis of coronavirus. We pray that you endow our leaders with wisdom as they navigate us out of these uncharted waters. In your mercy and love, bless our Bishop Blaish and all the clergy of this diocese as they offer pastoral care to a hurting and anxious people. For the strong, we ask that you give them the grace to strengthen others. May each person in this diocese be good examples of mindful and responsible individuals determined to mitigate against the occurrences and the effects of COVID-19. Finally, Father, we bring to you our entire diocesan ACM family, and we remember especially those who have suffered or are suffering and those who have died because of COVID-19. Bring peace to their families in a manner only you can. May the men of your church take their rightful roles and lead, and in a bond of love, show compassion and brotherhood to all. For these and all other blessings, we ask you to be most gracious with your favor. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Chaplain. Good evening again, and welcome all to Holy Cross Anglican Churchmen's panel discussion on the topic Christian Fathering in a Modern Bahamas. I am CJ McKenzie, president of the most dynamic and enthusiastic branch, a part of the Communion of Men's Ministries in the Anglican Diocese of the Bahamas, including the Turks and Caicos Islands. One of the greatest challenges we face in our country today is the abundance of broken homes caused by a lack of education on fathering and the complete absence of fathers in the lives of their children. As a Christian nation, it seems as though we have grown into a country known for making babies while falling short on teaching so many of our children how to be good, respectable, loving, and unselfish boys and girls based on sound biblical teaching. We do not believe there is only one way to raise a child, but we do recognize that we can all learn from each other. While some men struggle in parenting, there are others that pass with flying colors. Shortly, you will hear from some of the finest and most distinguished fathers in our organization, who all hold valuable but different perspectives on the role of being a father. With efforts to expand our reach of love, care, and encouragement, we decided to prepare a series of panel discussions over the next few Saturdays. Great candid discussions such as this one today on fatherhood is what we need more of. We thank each of you for joining us, and we hope you enjoy a very informative and enlightening panel discussion on the topic Christian fathering in the modern Bahamas. I would now like to introduce our moderator for tonight. He is a dynamic and devoted husband to Nicole Gray, an incredible father to 3 children, Jade, Tyler, and Philip Jr. He has always been a very active member of our church and currently serves as a male vocalist on our praise and worship team. He is a consultant pharmacist for the Public Hospital Authority by profession and is preparing to launch his own private business. Please welcome our host for this evening, Mr. Philip Gray Sr.
Thank you, Mr. President. And you're far too kind with your gracious words. Before we get into our panel discussion for the evening, let's do some housekeeping matters. You see, this is a virtual panel discussion, and we're not accustomed to that. But our rules then for this type of discussion is slightly different. So just bear with me as before we begin, I give you some keynotes to take mind to. Firstly, the host will be the only person to ask questions. The panelists will then respond to those questions in a period of 1.5 minutes at a time. We understand that you may, because of their responses, have questions of your own. We ask you to use the medium in the Zoom, the chat in there, to give us the questions that you may have. And then in turn, as your moderator, I will ensure that those questions are asked. The panel discussion will occur for approximately 90 minutes. Whenever you hear a dynamic response to anything, we just want you to give a thumbs up so that we know that you approve of what was just said. And if Ray misbehaves, then you give him a thumbs down. Are we clear on our simple list of rules? Well, let's just get right into it. My opening quote. A father is the noblest title a man can be given. It is more than a biological role. It signifies a patriarch, a leader, an exemplar, a confidant, a teacher, a hero, a friend. Robert L. Bachman. Welcome, gentlemen, to the Holy Cross ACM, first in a series of panels discussions. Today, we're talking fatherhood, Christian fathering in a modern Bahamas. This panel discussion promises to be thought-provoking, insightful, and exciting. And so, let us just introduce very briefly our 4 panelists. He is a lifetime Holy Cross member, the Chancellor of the Anglican Diocese, Treasurer of the Holy Cross ACM. He is the Senior Justice of the Supreme Court. He's married to April Turner, father of 3, a daughter and 2 sons. Justice Bernard Turner. Bernard.
Good evening.
Our second panelist is also a lifetime member of Holy Cross, a former director of the ACM, a career civil servant, recently appointed permanent secretary, currently posted in the Ministry of Labor. He's a late bloomer, friends, of the bunch, and you'll understand what I mean about that just a little later. But experience the way beyond his years with fatherhood. Married to the former Kamala Jha, Ray is the father of 3. Mr. Reginald Ray Saunders, our second panelist.
Thank you, Philip.
Mr. Patrick Douglas is also a very active member of Holy Cross, involved in several ministries. And when I say that, you'll understand a bit later as he explains in detail. He is a retired teacher of 46 years. That's as old as some of us on this chat. He is also married to Corinne Douglas, and that union has produced 3 lovely children. Help me welcome Mr. Patrick Douglas, our third panelist. Patrick?
Thank you. You're welcome.
And our fourth panelist is an active member of Holy Cross, a banker by profession, retired very early, making a bold move and switched to being, yes, ladies and gentlemen, a homeschooling parent. Aubrey is married to Bridget Sherman, and they have 2 children. Mr. Aubrey Sherman, let's welcome him.
Thank you very much. You're much too kind. You know, Phil, I thought it wonderful that you have the brightest minds in the room, and then you went contrary and invited me. But nonetheless, hope to do my part this evening. Thank you for your kind words.
And I will prove you wrong on that point. These 4 guys have a myriad of experiences, just the 4 of them. So let's just get right into it. We're talking fathering, a complex topic, a topic that all of us had to just jump in. You see, there's no manual, there's no book, there's absolutely nothing. It's simply the experiences that we bring from our lives into it. And so obviously, we come with our own mindsets, our own thoughts, our own experiences, and we bring that into the lives of the children that God bestowed to us. But before we get into their personal experiences, I want to look at the fact that as I was reading the Bahamas statistics, it indicated some startling information. 65% of the live births in our health system are by single parents, females. 85% of our households in New Providence and Grand Bahama are with single households, single parents, just the female. That information is startling. So, gentlemen, our panelists, as a teacher, a judge, banker, civil servant, from your vantage point, tell us the truth, the real deal of why this topic is so relevant and what you see in the real world in your profession. Let's start with our permanent secretary, who was formerly in charge of loans. And you know, everybody hustling for those loans for those children to go off to school. So Ray would have seen a whole plethora of persons coming through his office wanting those loans. Tell us what that experience was like and what it meant, and what you saw from the general public.
Thank you, Philip, and thank you to my fellow panelists, CJ, and those who are participating in this seminar, I guess you can call it, tonight. I just want to correct Philip on one thing. I'm not a career civil servant. I just started the civil service about 15 years ago. Before that, I was in banking. I have seen a lot of things in my life that has sort of changed my perception of the way I look at persons with respect to parenting. From working in the government and particularly in scholarship, what I have seen is, despite the upbringing of the child, or despite whether or not there is a multiple family, like a nuclear family, or just a single parent family that this child is being raised by, single parent, the child, I find that you know, there is no difference between the sort of the objectives and the enthusiasm of the person who is from a single parent home to get ahead in life. And I've seen, sorry.
Yes, Ray, but I also wanted you to channel in on in that experience, like you said, the children still rise up with ambition. But
Mhm.
are you seeing behind them? What are they being propelled by? Are they being propelled by mothers and fathers? Mothers
I
more
think
so?
I think they're being propelled by mothers. I think mothers want the best for their children. Yeah, we have a problem in the society where a lot of fathers are not around, and so mothers have to act as mothers and fathers in the upbringing of their children. I have seen through my many years of working in scholarships that mothers will do what they have to do to get their children to where they want them to be. And I look at some mothers and I am proud of the accomplishments that they have able, that what they have been able to accomplish by themselves in the development of their children. And I think if you look at a lot of the kids today who go off to school, and like you said, 80% of these families are from single parent homes. If you look at these kids today, they go away with an objective. They go away, they do what they have to do, and they come home. And sometimes what I find in working at scholarships is that the ones who are really, really dedicated are the ones who have had to struggle. And it's a testament to their ability, and they're taking advantage of the opportunities that are presented to them.
So moving from the scholarship program into the classroom. Mr. Douglas, tell us, what is your experience with young men, young ladies, and their complaints to you as it relates? Does it hold up to the statistics that they are mostly from single homes and they are absent fathers?
Yes, thank you very much. I must agree with Ray to some extent. And before I jump more into it, let me just do one quick definition of the term fathering before I go into depth with your question, because we need to clear up some issues. And I believe that fathering, like teaching, is a leadership vocation or ministry ordained by God, which outlines specific functions, roles, responsibilities, and parental duties, which a father faithfully undertakes with love and care for the growth and development of a child or children in a home or in a community. With that being established, I have noticed from the school, especially I have been at one school for 22 years here in the Bahamas, and I've seen so many single parents striving with their children. And, one of the things I noticed though over the years is that there have been this exposure of various parenting styles. And that is one of the biggest things that, to me, that is contributing to this trend that we are seeing. Because what the child or the children are hearing, especially from if it's a mother, it's the head of the home. And I sometimes used to have some problems where, as a male figure standing in front of that class with a number of boys, you can see how sometimes they are very hostile or, and not accommodating to what when we want to instill discipline. And one of the other things is the role of some of us in the school, as we have so many female teachers. And when you sometimes, try to discipline a male child, you might find that a female teacher will come and comfort and hug and, cajole that child. And this is one of the things, because that child knows, well, okay, my mom does this to me. And so the female influence in the school, supporting this. And
what do you hear mostly from those kids, though? What do you hear mostly as they confide from their lips to your ear? What is the main complaint or concern as it relates to the fact that parents are missing, the fact that a father is missing? What do you hear?
Because it's a stigma too that I have noticed that, people say that, you just make the babies and hand them over to the mother and let me go on doing what I feel as a male or a father, just get out and go and, plant seeds elsewhere. Because sometimes I notice that in some cases, you find children in the same class, they have different mothers, but the same father, and sometimes it causes problems. So that is one of the things I've been hearing from the children themselves.
Okay. So, from the judicial system, Justice Turner, going to tell us a little bit about what you see in that environment that is startling and alarming.
If we take Patrick's, and incidentally, good evening, and thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you, President McKenzie, for inviting me on this panel, and all of the co-panelists. We look forward to this evening's webinar. If we take Patrick's definition of fatherhood, then what we see in the court system is almost by definition a failure of some of those principles. And which is not to say that children who are not raised properly in a home environment may not end up before the criminal law courts, because that can certainly happen, and we have seen that as well. But a large percentage of the young men and most of the people on, since I'm in the criminal division of the court, who come before me are young men from single homes. And you know that in particular, and you see in particular the people who are in their lives when they are, for instance, under the age of 18, and therefore they have to have a parent or guardian with them. And it is almost universally a female who is there. Whenever a trial is going on and any member of the family is with that young person who is charged with sometimes the most serious offenses, if there is anybody there, it is almost universally a female, either a mother or a grandmother. In fact, what you see distressingly in the court system, unfortunately, is young men, 19, 20, sometimes 18, charged with the most serious criminal offenses, who are before that court, and there is not a single soul besides their attorney who's paid either by the state, generally by the state, to represent them. Nobody is sitting in the court to be their support. They're there on their own. And you speak to them and try and find out what is going on in their lives to the extent that you can properly do so. And generally, there is a lack of any kind of parental support, and most certainly not any type of father parental support. Very few positive male figures. And you get the sense that in many instances, besides their interaction with any male teachers, and again, coming back to Patrick's point, the only other male interaction that they have is, unfortunately, with police officers when they find themselves being arrested, and sometimes they'd say being harassed by the police, and then when they end up before the courts. Precious little male interaction in their lives in a positive and reinforcing way. And it is a problem which is intractable, and which, despite our best efforts, and you say, how do you address these things? And that's at the start. And then at the end, if they are convicted, when you get a probation report and you read the probation report again, that story is reinforced, and you get it, you discern it initially, and then you see it in black and white in the probation report. that the father has been absent. Sometimes the identity of the father is not known to the child, and the persons who are in his life, again, in terms of who the probation officer is able to speak with, universally women. And
Bernard, you just said that in a large number of instances, they don't even know who the father is. Is that what you just said?
and in some instances, the information about the father is unknown, because the probation report will always seek to contact the parents of these children, of these young men, and even the grandparents. And in more than a few instances, there is no certainty as to who the father is. And so the father has no active part in that child's life. There are exceptions, to be very clear, there are exceptions. But unfortunately, the exception is what really should be the rule. As I say all the time, you can operate in a society in which there are a few bad apples in the barrel, because you can selectively move the bad apples before it corrupts the good apples. But when most of the apples in the barrel are bad apples, then you have a completely different problem on a much different scale. And so that is an unfortunate reality.
Our three panelists so far, including the senior justice, has just told us we have a dilemma. Mr. Sherman,
what you saying, my brother?
In the bank, the environment of the young men who either come in as customers or as fellow employees, what do you see?
Interesting. I'm now retired for some 5 years plus, so the banking now, no doubt, has changed in that time. But certainly when I was there, I did have been exposed to persons that were single parents, that was certainly challenged by their circumstances. But I also very mindful. I can remember so clearly of those, despite their circumstances, were able to understand them and pray to God for wisdom. See, that's the key for me. You need, for anything to end right or continue on, you need to start right. So you need to understand that our strength is not enough. So we seek God's guidance. We pray for wisdom first. And with that wisdom, I was able to understand that there's a process to life. That process is he, we, me. And that transcends to parenthood, that transcends to every other thing. He, meaning we have to recognize this word of God, that we will bend our knee, whether we do so willingly. Remember that sermon that Chandler Sands preached for way back? You either bend your knee willingly, or you bend it some point deliberately by God's hand. So you have to respect first that God is in charge. Secondly, we put others. Understand, put yourself in other people's position. Understand where they are. It can't always be about yourself. You understand where they try to be inclusive. It's about the person, your neighbor. That's the we factor. He, we, and then me. When you're able now to pray for this wisdom and understand your limitation, then only then you have to acquaint yourself with the principle. Once that process is understood, start right, the process, he, we, me, then there's a life balance. That life balance is what makes it all come together. That life balance is.
Aubrey, I need you to check your mic.
Certainly,
we get the comment coming in that some of the persons are unable to hear you.
I feel I'm in a cockpit with this headphone on. Is it better now? I trust.
Yeah, that's better.
Excellent. Okay, so what I'm saying, to tie it all together though, that process, it's about this careful balance that the Lord has helped me with to understand. This careful balance is about listening, it's about talking, and then it's about action. And it's an equal share, 33.33, infinite amount of threes. 33% is about listening. That listening means everything that you possibly could read, all of your quiet time, all of your Bible time, anything that you read or interpret or hear, anything. That's the time that you think. That's when we talk about listening. That's 33% of your life. That's what it should be about. The next 33% should be about talking. Because you need to now express yourself in what you've heard, what you've taken in. That should only be 33% of your life. Me and many of us are far too ahead on the talk. And then the final thing, the balance, is that action. So here, that life balance, listening, talking, action. That action part, that's how we give. That's everything we could possibly do. So the Lord has helped me with this opportunity to understand His wisdom. Through that, understand process to life, and then the balance. And then that transcends into fatherhood. Believe you me, your children now, they look more at what you do than what you say. Look at what you do. So that balance in life, I'm telling you. Single parents, I admire them. For me, I know it couldn't work for me personally because I understand my limitations. I truly, truly do. I was once single. I had an opportunity to be wayward. But I thank the Lord that the Lord has guided me in a way to understand my limitations and seek out an able mate in a wife, and to understand that. So when you're raising children, apply that balance. Remember to talk with the words and the action. Apply that balance. Understand that process to life. Then you, from that, you're able to be an example of fatherhood. For me, it's all about that balance, that careful balance. Too often we're eager to act. Sometimes people don't even listen. We don't even talk. We don't even interpret. We just want to act first. That's not observing the life balance. Sometimes we talk too much. I've always been told that I talk too much, but I'm very careful. Having said so, very careful to understand that balance to life is important. So this is my very first Zoom meeting. I've never been on a Zoom meeting before. This is my first. So I understand that WhatsApp, Facebook, and all of that thing, that is hindering my progress. I have to push the action. I have to push the listening.
Okay. So as we summons in and we came to the conclusion that we have some challenges in our culture with fatherhood, we have 4 panelists who we've recognized as honorable fathers. I want you guys to tell us a little bit about your personal experience with fatherhood. We're going to start with Mr. Douglas. Your personal experience.
I come to the realization that there are different parenting styles as similar to teaching styles.
Yeah, but I want to hear your style.
Yes, and so I'm just telling you then, and to bring to the attention that I have adopted a godly parenting style where there is consistency because of your own self, knowing yourself, who you are and whose you are, and you channel that kind of thought. And like for me, as the children move from one stage, from childhood stage to pubescence, then adolescence, and then adulthood. And in all those phases or stages of their life, you are intimately involved with them in whatever social, intellectual, moral development. You combine all of that. And one of the things that I have in my home, where the children know that we have a family mission statement with certain beliefs and principles. And at the end of the year, we sit down as a family and discuss, review the year, what went good, the high points, the low points, and how can we improve on those things. So that was something being done with such consistency, and it has helped them where today I can be so Please.
I can adopt that as of tomorrow. I can talk to my family about this. Because I've heard of businesses having mission statements, but I've
Yeah.
never heard of the family. But I
Yeah.
like that idea. The
It's
fact that
very,
you have a
very
mission statement because it's then a
Yeah.
guideline,
Mhm.
guidepost for where the family should be going.
Yeah.
I need to talk to Reginald for a second, and he need to tell us how he does it. See, because for those of you who don't know, most of us had our children in our 20s and 30s, but not Ray. Ray was smarter than us. He decided to wait long
Wait
years
on the
after.
Lord.
Tell us what that experience has been like, Ray.
Yeah, Philip, nothing before it's time. But remember now, I raised my sister's kid.
Yes, indeed.
So when my sister passed away in 2003, all three of them called me from Eleuthera and said, Uncle Ray, we want to come to Nassau and we want to live with you. At that time I was single. I was having a good time. And here it is now, these kids coming to me to sort of cramp my style. But, based on the relationship that I have with my sister, there was no way that I could have told them that they couldn't come here. So I agreed against the objection of a lot of family members. You're a single man, how you can take on 3 children, this, that, the next. But I had to do it for my sister. And they came, and my parenting style with them is a lot different from my parenting style today. Back then, I looked at my role as a support base, someone to support them in whatever they wanted to do, someone that they can talk to, someone where they felt comfortable living inside the domains of my home and making them feel like this was their home. Um, and that worked well. However, there were some deficiencies I realized later on. When I had my own children, um, which was 5 or 10 years later, 12 years later, I realized that, my parenting, the way that I parent has to change because, the first crew, they always had their father that they could have gone and talked to or discussed things that they might not have wanted to discuss with me. And they always had their mother's sort of best friends who could talk to them about, things that were of interest to them more than I could at the time. And so I realized that in my life as it is today, I wanted to provide a sort of environment for my kids that involve inclusiveness, that involved a lot of love, because I want my kids to be able to come to me with any issue that they may have. And I want them to be able to come to me and be able to discuss as openly as they can. So sometimes I have to be a disciplinarian, but also I have to be a good listener. Sometimes I have to say no, but yes, again, sometimes I have to explain why I'm saying no. We had a meeting yesterday where, my parents were sort of the beating type, especially my mother. And for me now, I don't beat my kids. I may want to, but I don't because I don't feel that, I just feel bad after I beat them and I don't want to feel bad. So, I just, tell them go to their room or something. So the parenting styles have changed. I think that in a lot of families that I have seen, including my own, like my own mother's family and my father's family, the whole thing is based on love and mutual respect. Now, you can't allow your children to get away with everything, but once the love is there and the mutual respect is there, and you bring them up in the ideas in which I was brought up, going to church, knowing the Bible, doing the right thing. You know, my mother always used to say, watch how you treat people. You treat everybody the same, because you don't know how this person is going to help you when you're in a dark alley or etc. So love, inclusiveness, um, discipline, those are my hallmarks now for the way that I try to parent today.
Interestingly, I mean, it's so commendable. A young man who would take on 3 of his niece and nephews and rear them, and don't shortchange yourself, Ray, because I hear you saying, you know, they would go to other people, but they were extremely close to you. And,
Oh yeah,
and I
yeah,
believe that they could talk to you just about anything.
yeah.
So what essentially is different for what you would have allowed them to get away with that you wouldn't
I think I'm
allow?
more patient now. I think the older I get, I'm
Mm.
more patient. I remember when my mother, you know, my mother had 3 kids. There were 5 years between each of us, you know, and when my brother and sister went out, you know, they left the light on. My parents left the light on, and the last person home turned the light off.
Mm.
By the time I came around, man, they was putting the chain on the door and turning all the lights off. So I had to walk around the house to go wake them up to come open the door. You know, so as 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 they got older, they got more lax, you know, in their approach to parenting. Like I could have had people come in my room. I used to have my friends come in my room and we'll turn on the TV, watch, listen to music, etc. My sister could not do that, or my brother. They couldn't entertain in their bedrooms,
Mhm.
you know. So as we get older, you know, I have mellowed out somewhat. I could accomplish the same thing in terms of the love and admiration of my children from doing it this way as from doing it another way. And so I try to encourage them. I try to parenting for me should be, it shouldn't be a task. It should be something that you do in love. I love my kids. You know, I love all my kids. And so you know, that's my approach.
Indeed. So, Justice Turner, tell us a little bit about your rearing of your 3 kids.
Well, Philip, I proceed from a very simple basis, which is that example is better than precept. So you can lay down, you can speak as much as you want about what should be done, but what you really have to do is to try and demonstrate that. Now, what do I mean by that? In terms of, in order to foster a relationship with my children, I wanted them to be able to see my relationship with my parents. And I've been fortunate that they were able to do that, to see that for some years, up until my father passed, both of my parents, up until my father passed 2.5 years ago. They were able to see how I interacted, even in his later years, even when he wasn't as vibrant and as mobile as he used to be, as I knew Max would turn it to be. But I wanted them to see how I interacted with my father in his frailty and how I interact and respect my mother in the same way as I saw that with my mother and how she treated with her parents. So that they understand the meaning of being a child and being in a relationship with a parent. And so that now that I'm in that position, they see how I, as a child of a parent, treats with my parents. They've been able to see that, and they know then how to interact with me, and they see how I would want to interact with them. The second thing is that I firmly believe in, you know, there's not a one style which will suit everybody. You have to treat each child as an individual, because the way in which you deal with one child may differ considerably from how you deal with the other. Over the past several months during this pandemic, I had spent a lot of time at home, and both of my boys are home. Daughter's in the United States, but both of the boys were home. And for long periods of time, Alex was doing virtual classes, and so he was at home. Joshua doing college virtually, and so he's at home. And so we spent a lot more time together. Now, with Alex, I have to draw things out of Alex. With Joshua, he is always engaging. But what I have to do, so where I'm seated right now, is where I did a lot of my work, but Joshua is the sort of person, he would come to talk and knock on the door and come in. And I had to be careful not to, well, Joshua, this is a bad time to engage. Well, if I'm literally in a matter, then obviously I can't engage with him. But to do that in a way in which to let him know as soon as I'm free, I will do so. Because he took advantage of the fact that I was around and in the house a lot more to engage with him. So I engage with him in that. Engage with Alex when I'm picking him up from school. And so the 25-minute drive allows me an opportunity to engage and draw out of him a lot more than I was able to when it was Joshua and Alex I was picking up from school, because then Joshua would tend to dominate the conversation because he is that much more engaging in terms of conversation. And then collectively as a family, we have to come together as well. And so we do that around the dinner table. And we do that as well, and just around the
Let's
dinner
still
table.
do that, Bernard. Eat around the dinner
Try to do
table.
that as much as we can. It's not 7 days a week, but we do that certainly several days a week. And what we now have is a Jeopardy time. So Jeopardy comes on at 7:30 p.m. And that frames my time now, so that now that I'm going back to the office, I know that I have to be home in time for Jeopardy at 7:30. And all of us watch Jeopardy together. And that's a good time for engagement, and also a good time to draw out information and knowledge and to see. So there's a sort of a competition between me and the boys in terms of that. Now, Joshua will kill me in a number of categories, and I think I have my categories. And although Alex the other day got an answer in the law that I didn't before I got it. And so, but it's a good time in a informal setting to engage and to have family time. And I find that that's important because, well, this pandemic has taught us a lot of things. But what it has shown is that just because you're in the house together, you're not necessarily together, particularly if everybody's in their own room. So you have to bring them out and get together around a meal or around something like Jeopardy or some other activity that you would engage in.
Sure. So guys, you remember in the introduction, I told you that Aubrey was, I think the line I used was, he's crazy. Did I say that? No, I didn't quite say that. But he's certainly daring. The man was brave enough after retiring early to take on homeschooling. And I'm sure you all seen the memes that says the parents ready to kill the children and everything else because of homeschooling. But this man said to me that he actually enjoys it. So tell us, from your perspective, your parenting skills and how you've been able to make that transition and enjoy it.
Let me be very, very blunt and honest. It didn't always start out like that. I can tell you that not the father his baby struck wasn't one of those that said, boy, it looks like a big family, plenty children. No, right at the onset, when I was engaged, I asked my soon-to-be wife, more than likely, I know you want children, sweetheart, but just how much you had in mind. She said to me, certainly she would feel satisfied with one, but we planned for two, because I'm a twin, Aubrey and Audrey, so I know how life can be unpredictable. So we start off. Remember I said,
bring your mic down for us, please.
Yes, okay, here we go. Back in the cockpit. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. So what I did at a very early on during our relationship prior to the marriage, I asked my soon-to-be wife if she was, how much children she had in mind, and she said she was satisfied with one. So planning for us was extremely important. She said one, we planned for two, just in case, because I'm a twin, and I understand how unpredictable life can be. So I know that from the plan for one and the end for two. Lo and behold, but I know 10 years before my first son was born, we had made all the preparations humanly possible in the financing and the rest. Because we understood that the children are no joke. So before Aubrey was born, 10 years he was in the plan. My daughter, 13 years before she was born. So I had the advantage unlike others. And I admire those. I go back to what we were talking about single parenting. I respect those that can do it, but I know for me, for certain, I still understand my limitations. When my children were young, that was my wife's primary responsibility. When I say young, I mean when they were prior to 8 and prior. That was my wife's responsibility. After 8 years old, they are older. They can read, write, and understand, follow instruction. Then I'm happy. So this is why I can boast about the remote schooling that I'm so currently enjoying now. But it's all about doing the same, showing your children, not so much telling, showing them how much enjoyment it is. You know, even for me, I have a cute little rule that I've enforced over the years. I never reward my children for doing well in school. Never. I say to them, you know, I say to them, thank you. And I'll tell you why it's such a good thing. Because children first have to understand their role. Doing well and having fun is their primary objective. My primary objective as a father is to provide, educate, certainly pass on biblical principles and the rest of that. That's the role of a parent. But they have roles too. Everybody in the household must have roles, and their children understand that. Listen, I say, for having fun and making time for God, that's upfront. And then academically, I've proven that if you don't focus too much on the good grades and making a big deal of it, it's interesting how it flips. Because for me, now what I focus on is when my kids get the 96%. I highlight and make a big deal of it. I said, listen, now look at this time that you're going to waste. This is going to cut into our playtime. Now I have to go over and try to earn that 4%. So for them now, they're not the smartest kids, but they only think that they are. And that's the difference. So now they understand clearly that it is easier for them to play and enjoy life when they hit that 100 the first time. Hit that 100 the first time. So now hitting hundreds now becomes such a trivial thing. And I only make a big deal when they hit the 7 or the 6 or the 5. I said, look at it. Now we can't even play like we wanted to because we got to go over this lesson again. And because we do that, that's an interesting technique. Believe me, it has worked for me. It has worked for me. It has changed the dynamics in my household.
And you're enjoying this, Aubrey, all day? That you're spending so much time with them and their schooling and helping and assisting them is.
Well, the world has changed, my brother, and so have I. I am what I call a supervisor. I was a manager in my role at the bank, and so I translate that at my home life. I don't want to sit down and mark notebooks and do a hard work. No. What we enjoy now is remote schooling. So we have persons that do that. My job is to encourage them, get the best out of them. And you can do that if you believe in this thing. I can tell you that if you just focus for a minute on the grades that are not so good, you say, listen, this is what we're going to work on. You pay no mind to the 100%. The 100% will come. They come now daily. And only because I trivialize and don't focus on it. I focus on the grades that are not so well. And I say, this is going to hinder us from having the good time that you know you must have as children. Because remember now, having a good time is part of their job. That's not a job for me. I had my good time. I now have to instill discipline. But for them, good time. And so what I do is I translate those struggles, and everyone has struggles. My children, I make sure that their struggles, they understand. Listen, we have to get it Let's try to get it right the first time. So it's a mind conditioning almost. I learned this, I tell you, after prayer, this is not my God. I was able through that, I hope other people embrace that as well. Through that, I was able to turn my children around from what they used to get, which was your B's. Now they're A performers because I trivialize it. I say that's a must. That is a must for you guys. And to do that though, to not do that will hinder you from getting the playtime that everybody love the video games and all that. So once
Kudos to you, my brother.
I'm telling you, and that has worked for me, and it has translated in I mean, so from B's to A's across the board. And my children are the brightest. The difference between me and them, just between those, my children and others are, they just think that they are. And my job is to help them believe that. That's the wisdom and help them believe that they can do it. Because all things are possible. All things are. That's my belief. Especially for those who believe, my brother. For those who believe. And I tell you, starting planning is important. Start it. If you don't plan it, you're not going to end right. So my wife took on the remote schooling early. I opposed at first because I didn't feel like I could do it. But boy, Papa, I'm showing my children and my life that this now is my role. I thoroughly enjoy it. Everyone is homeschooling now. Everybody. The whole world is doing it. The whole world. I've had the advantage of doing it now 5+ years. But the good thing is that I also appreciate the benefit. Now, it's now about the respect, the admiration they would have for their teacher, naturally translates now to the parent to be a good at it. So now I'm the authority that they can relate to. And I mean, so it's a listen. I'm learning every day. I'm telling you, this remote schooling, I'm learning some things.
It's a learning process for you, but you're enjoying the ride. I want you guys to think for a second as you answer this. We're Christian men, so I want us to think about what practical things that we do, principally to instill the Christian values that we want our children to have, and particularly as Anglican men, what do we do so that they understand and appreciate our way of worship?
So
Mr.
I'd love to.
Mr. Douglas.
I'd love to.
One of the things that quickly you can allow them to know the gifts and talents that they have and what do you do with it. And like for me, coming at Holy Cross there, when I was asked to coordinate the church's Vocation Bible School, I was new to the church. I didn't know anything about organizing such an event, but it's the way in which sometimes you are so obedient when God tells you to do something. And that is what happened to me in 2002. And I had my entire family with me. And even my wife for the first time discovered that she never knew that I had such gifting of organizing. And she wanted to know, where did I get all of this from? And when I finished that first VBS in 2002, Bishop Boyd then was our rector. He himself came to me and said, Patrick, how did you do it? This has never happened in Holy Cross, really. And I just pointed my hands up in the air. But
so are you saying that by doing the Vacation Bible Schools, that was the foundation for you in planning out how you would instill
one of the things at home, apart from that, one of the things at home is prayer. Where as those children were very young, every morning as they got up, we said prayers as a family together. And sometimes we rotated the prayers. And I mean, like for me, then sometimes the children hear Daddy praying, they say, oh Lord, Daddy praying long. But nevertheless, that was the foundation, prayer. And then, I mean, when I got them all to come along with me during Vacation Bible School and they see me leading, and they themselves, just got excited, Daddy, what next coming on, in the next year and so forth. And I mean, I just continue. And then I felt so proud when Patricia herself eventually was teaching some of the classes at TBS when she, became a young adult and so forth. And and all the children were involved, with the band, and they played and so forth. And so I just encourage them using their gifts and talents for the service of God. And that is how He has done it for me. I am seeing where that now as instilled into them, and they are doing what we see as they get older now.
In essence, they saw Christianity in action. They saw you, they saw your wife working and doing things in a certain way, and so they just adopted to it principally. Yeah. Yeah. Aubrey, tell us. Aubrey? No, we can't hear you. We'll come
Your
back
mic
to
is
you.
muted.
Forgive me. Yes, I'm sorry.
The question was, what practical steps have you taken to build the foundation on their faith?
On their faith. I've had the good fortune of understanding how important it is to show my children better than I tell them. So every day I say, read the Bible to me. So every day they find some way to read scripture, and that's what we integrate that as part of our worship every morning and make it quite fun. They've been doing this for years, and because of that small task, my children are now excited to read in church whenever they call on to do any kind of scripture or any kind of reading in church. I'm telling you, based on that active daily devotion that we do in the home. As a result of that, I can tell you, the Lord has been so good to me. I've heard Aubrey say it's going on nearly 2 years, a year and a half. He's thinking seriously about the priesthood. So when he said that to me, I was very cautious, I was very cautious because I know what a big role the priesthood is. And so when he said, I want to make certain that that's what he wanted, so I'm not feeling a pressure that he's doing that because his parents wanted to. Suddenly, I'm pleased now. Aubrey's now 17. He's talking seriously now, putting a very serious effort of all that he does into embracing the priesthood. That's what his focus is as he considers college that's coming up soon.
Aubrey,
yes.
We're challenged again with hearing you.
I think your mic may be too close to your mouth. Sort of back it out a little bit.
Is that any better? I'm not convinced. Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
That's better?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I have to wait. I thank the Lord every day for allowing Aubrey to embrace the priesthood. He's talking seriously about the priesthood. I've made a promise to the Lord that listen, he could commit his life in that fashion. I'm able and still alive to see. Lord, you can take me home on that day when he's ordained. Because I feel like for me is a degree of satisfaction knowing that because it's not about anything, everything in life is unless you're doing it for the Lord, it really doesn't matter, I mean, it doesn't matter what you can boast of accomplishing. Less what is done for the Lord. It doesn't amount to anything. So I'm happy to know that every of his own embrace that fear. And he's encouraging his sister as well. And so I'm telling you that I'm as a parent, I so understand how important it is to show as opposed to just talk about now showing. What they see you do is what they tend to embrace as opposed to what you constantly say.
So, as the chancellor of the diocese, certainly as a lifelong Anglican active, parents in the church, I'm sure the example that you put forward for your kids is all tied in with all of those relationships and roles that you've played. Tell us how you mold your kids in the faith.
It's it's an interesting question. Again, I have tried to, not because I have been so active, to cause them or to force them to be, but to put before them an example so that they can make a choice in respect of engagement and involvement. Now, we also try to apply this within our home. We have structured time in terms of Bible study and prayers. Based on the time of the year, that has to change because of when I was growing up, 24 hours was a long time, but today, apparently, it's down to about 18 hours of what it felt like back in the day. So we have to structure that time. So some of that is done with me absent, for instance, when they recite the creed as they're going into school, because of the half-hour drive that they take to get to school. But we ensure that the structure is there and that the basics are there. And then we try to build on that. But I also try to engage with them in our discussions, so that in any discussion about any subject, I try to return to our principles, of our Christian principles, in terms of how you look at something, how you look at this situation in school, how you look at this situation in society. When we discuss the news or we discuss world events, when we even discuss geopolitics, because my son's engaged. Today, we were talking about some of the causes of the Second World War and what came out of that, about the formation of the State of Israel, as to the whole issue with Palestinians and that whole dynamic in the Middle East. So I try to apply our principles to that situation. And in every other discussion, when we talk about a matter, it's not because you don't like this person that you should feel this way about a person, but as a Christian, that you have to look at people in a different way. And it is not an eye for an eye or to get you back for something that has been done to you. And so we try to apply in everything which they do Christian principles, so that there is a right answer or a right response to the particular situation that they may be in. And that can be fairly tricky sometimes, because there are some interesting dynamics that come up, situations in school, and again, because they like to read a lot and they like to discuss world events, to explain within a Christian setting, applying Christian principles, things which are happening. And that includes even the concept of racism and whether people are allowed to be that way, and the freedom of expression, freedom of choice, but there being a right way, but people being free to choose a wrong way. And how do you treat with those persons? Do you cut them off, or do you try to engage them in a discussion to change their views? So we try to do all of that within the context of our everyday lives. And that's what I try to do.
Yeah, interesting that you said that, because I just had that discussion this morning at track practice, the right for people to be able to choose even the wrong thing. But as our children understand that there are consequences, Miss Eneas and Father Strawn had a saying, in life there are no, what was it?
There are no rewards, or there are no.
In life, I know it ended with there's simply consequences.
Rewards and penalties.
Consequences
for action. There you go.
Consequences of your actions.
Yeah. In life, there are no punishments or rewards, simply consequences for action.
You will suffer or endure the consequences
of your actions. Indeed.
Reactions.
So, Ray, and you take that similar orthodox approach as Bernadette?
I think mine is a little different. I think, one of the things that I think the Anglican Church got right, among other things, was the community-based church. Um, Holy Cross, Holy Cross was a community-based church that attracted people in the community. And the people who are around the church were the members of Holy Cross. And that's where a lot of our relationships right now come from. You know, Philip and I and Bernard have been friends for almost 50 years. Um, because that was the community, that was the ideal of the community-based church. What in terms of getting my kids, one of the things that Bernard said is that, you know, you have to lead by example. You know, I take my children to church. They are involved in all sorts of church. Our life, a lot of our life centers around the church. We go to church every Sunday. They're involved in scouts and Girl Guides and Sunday school and Christian achievers and young adults. All of these things build that community and build that longing for my kids to want to come to church because that's where their friends are. Other than school, their friends and the people who they interact most go to the church. The fact that we go to an Anglican church and the same people that are in the church also go to the Anglican school makes it even better because that means that my kids now, they want to go to church to see their friends and they also want to go to school to see their friends. And I think, um, you know, I really don't have to, I really don't have to, I guess, prod them. Um, you know, they see my example, they see the connections that I have in church. You know, they have to, you know, all of y'all are my kids' uncles and aunts de facto, you know, and I'm hoping that by seeing this example, they would continue this tradition of getting involved and participating regularly in church. I remember, you know, my mother and all of us could remember, you know, if you went out on a Saturday night and you stayed out till 3 o'clock in the morning, you better be in Holy Cross Church 9 o'clock Sunday morning. You had no choice. Um, and you know, no matter how you felt, you had to go to church and you had to go to Sunday school and you had to participate. Um, when I went to college, because I went to church so much every Sunday, a lot of it forced, I sort of took a back seat from church. And I didn't go to church as regularly as I should. When I finished college, I came home and I still stayed away from church. But boy, there was a pinging in me. You know, Ray, you should go to church. Ray, go to church. Ray, go to church. And I started coming back to church. And let me tell you, within 6 months, I was already hooked and get involved in everything and treasure the church and this, that, the next. And so the longing for it, it always brings you back. So no matter how I want my kids to long for it, to be such a part of it that they think that it's a part of their everyday life. And so they just want to be involved in the whole Christian movement which centers around church.
And so most of us are finding that our children find church exciting. So then we have the challenge of them saying, I don't want to be here because it's not good or it's not entertaining or it's not what I would desire in worship. Is that a challenge?
I think that's a challenge. That's what the church is going through now in terms of young people finding their way back to church. But I think it's going to come back. Now, some things in the church we have to change to meet this sort of modern era or modern environment and make it more exciting for young people. But I think, you know, a lot of our kids, even though they may have reservations about maybe coming to church, I think as they get older, that gnawing in their heart, that yearning is going to come right back and they're going to find themselves right back.
Okay.
That's what I feel.
Because I think one of the things that was different with us is we made the changes, or we helped to make the changes. I want to switch a little bit. You know, we got a little colloquialism, a little talk. They say, do you run your house or do you run around your house? Who run things? Tell the truth, gentlemen. Who run things? You, your wife, or the children?
You recording this or what? Right away.
Chain looking.
Well, listen, I'm happy to say, buddy, you could check with my wife and you could check with my children. You could ask them and you could ask them with me present or with me absent. There ain't no question who the man is in the house,
Who run your house?
who the woman is in the house, who the prince is in the house, and who the princess is. Everybody got a role, and ain't nobody taking my role, because I know my role. I was ordained by God for this role. Trust me, and I don't give this
There you
up.
go.
I can tell you, I say it proudly.
And that means you run things? And that means you run things?
I'm happy to say, Phil, that my wife understands and allows me to run things. That's the difference.
There you go. Sounds
She allows me because she don't run it. She has said that to me over and over. She don't want my role. She understands how important the role of the father is. And I so understand, but more than most, how important the role is as a mother. So I admire those with the single parenting, but the only dual could work for me, my brother. Because some things I can do and ain't prepared to do. I can tell you. So, you know, we run a very odd household, you know, back in the day. Because when my children were very, very tiny, my wife happily did everything. I never changed pampers. I never make a bottle. I never do it. She happily took on the role, but she braced me. She said, listen, when they get older, I know I can't do it. That's going to be you. So now, in all fairness, I have to embrace that role, and I'm happy to do so. But when they were small, I used to run. I used to stay away. Now, now I am happy. So I can tell you, shoot, you can ask her, but there ain't no
Speak the truth and shame the devil.
I
You say it away.
Truth and shame to everybody. And she happy.
Mr. Douglas,
Yeah.
you and I, we got adult children, meaning that our kids
That's
are
right.
in their 20s, late teens, or older.
Yeah.
The dynamics are a little different, isn't it? You know, when
Yes.
they in the young teens and like raised kids, it's a whole different ball game.
Yes. As I see, you know, I believe in this principle of interdependence. Once we know our strengths and weaknesses, we allow that to go with it. Because my wife came from a financial background. She was an auditor at the central bank, and you know, it's just that when she came here, she had to go into teaching, and all the years I was doing it, and she understood my role to be like the educator, the one who will deal with the intellectual development of the children. And then, you know, in my whole sphere of leadership, I had so much exposure in political affairs and back in Guyana. And, you know, I mean, it's also it's a new dimension that when I came here, a lot of things I had to just abandon and but just focus on the family. So with her competence in financing, I mean, she's the one who takes care where budgeting is concerned and so forth. That's her strength, and that's why I allow her to demonstrate that strength that she has. But you know, we all have our strengths and weaknesses, and that is how it has been working for us. And now that the children are seeing, you know, where our strength lies, they gravitate to it too, because like Patricia now is so much interested in finance, and that she gravitates towards that, and you know, she asks some other several things, and that's why she's, you know, pursuing studies in that area. And well, Paul also said that, man, you get some talent with leadership and so on, and like, you know, just embrace that one. And say you want to just move into the same, you know, light to take on leadership role. So, you know, I mean, the children, as we make ourselves the example for them, they just go with the flow. And as you said, you know, they're in their 20s now, and you know, they have different horizons. They see things from a different perspective, to which I sometimes and listen to them as I engage them and let them because they are going into adulthood, they have to make decisions, and you allow them to speak things that where they want things to go. So, as I said,
Am I hearing that it's a shared role now?
share role, yes, that's
shared
all
role?
about it.
You,
Share,
your wife,
yeah,
and the adult children are helping to make the
yes,
decision.
yes. They all are in the decision making what they want because, like, like Thanksgiving Day, Patricia, first time you said, well, I am taking care of the preparation of food for Thanksgiving. We just sat down there and nothing more, you know. So here it is. Their time come now. They are doing the things now. So they are adults now, and we are so happy now that they have learned, from over the years what we are inculcating in their heads.
Philip, if I could just interject for 2 seconds, you know, if we look at, I was when I sort of was looking at this topic, and I went through my head for the last couple of days, and I said to myself, I asked myself, who are the role models? Who are my role models? Who are the men that I look up to, the fathers that I look up to in my life? And I look at, first of all, my grandfather, my mother's mother, who raised 9 children, and they all made a life for themselves. I look at people like your father, Philip, or Bernard's father, and Robert's father, Leish Boyd, um, Father Roach. These were the people who they were role models to me, and they were role models because you know their wives were an instrumental part in the upbringing of their children. Their wives were very, very important. So, to say that, I am the leader of my house. I mean, my wife, I know I'm the leader, and my wife don't do anything unless she consults me. But I think in today's day and age, it's more a collaborative effort because, you
Mhm.
know, she
That's the
making more
word.
than me. So she got more, she got more say in the household in terms of the finances, but she doesn't do anything unless, she consults me. And I think it's important for the kids to see that as well, that,
Mhm.
that,
Yeah,
um, it's a collaborative.
collaborative. Yes, that's the word. I like that word.
Collaborative.
Yeah, that's so
It
term.
has to be. I think it has to be. It's no longer a situation where the wife's staying home and the wife is commanding as much authority and opportunity as us. However, like Aubrey says, he knows in his home, the buck stops with him, and the buck stops with all of us men. The buck stops with us. If anything happens, people, how you could let people do that, and how that could happen to
Yeah,
you. So, yeah, but it is collaborative, I think,
I was
yeah.
asking Bernard,
getting more and more.
I was about to ask Bernard, when emerging teenage children, how have you seen the roles change?
Not too quick, Philip. Just
Yeah,
We have
thank
to,
you.
I mean,
I firstly, sorry, I just dropped off momentarily. When you asked the question, immediately my neighborhood internet dropped, and we've been having some challenges with that. And I'm wondering if that wasn't a sign for me to remain silent on that subject. But really, Patrick and Ray have touched on the answer, which is what I was going to indicate, which is really that this is more about complementarity. I mean, really, it does have to be collaborative. Um, it is not so much about labeling who the leader is as ensuring that the task gets done. And too often I've seen in too many other settings, unfortunately, the men abusing this authority which they say is given to them, and that is so, that's biblical, but they use it to be dictators in their homes and to be really not any benevolent dictators at all, but tyrants, which is probably a better word, tyrants, as you see some people behaving on the world stage presently. And that, because you have position and power, doesn't give you privilege to abuse and misuse persons. And so I think the effective thing is that husband and wife have to complement each other in raising the children. Each of us will have our strengths, and you combine those, and you hope that together that makes a perfect couple for the purposes of raising. Not that it'll be perfect, because there is no such thing as any perfection in human endeavor, but it allows us to be a team, to support each other's weaknesses with our strengths, and hopefully they do complement, and vice versa. And so that's how I look at that. That is how I look at the role. It is not so much about getting a title and a crown in any event. As I remind people all the time, whenever there's a king, there is always a queen. Strangely enough, when there is a queen, then it's not necessarily a king. And so and you actually see that but that's off the topics, like in how they give out titles. A sir, his wife becomes a lady, but a dame, a husband does not become anything. But that's just some British prejudice, and we don't need to focus on that. But it's a complementary role. That's my 5 cents on that subject.
So several times tonight, we would have referred to our parents, our grandparents. Is your parenting skills similar, very different, or directly opposed to what it is that your parents did?
No, I think they're similar. For me, as a father, I took on Ray mentioned about your exemplars from life. And so for me, it is my grandfather and my father, my mother's father and my father. Now, anyone who knew both of them knew that they were polar opposites. My father was a more cerebral person. Then my grandfather was a practical, hands-on kind of man. And I tried, and I try as best I can to combine the two of those, to combine the intellectual bent of my father to the practical life ability of my grandfather. I didn't get any cooking skills from him, so I willingly accept that that is a failure on my part to get that from him. And that's something I don't touch. But I have tried to do that. And in doing that, I try to teach my sons how to be practical young men, how to be able to be handy men, how to do things, how to be useful around the house, but also to have an intellectual curiosity, to question things, to ask questions, to read, to delve in, to discover. Hence the jeopardy, because that requires, in order to have some answers, you need to be able to read and to know things. And so I try to combine the two of those. I wouldn't say that certainly, as compared to my father, I think I've been more hands-on. My parents never helped me with any homework, never. You did homework on your own in our day. But now you have to be, maybe Aubrey's example is a little different because Aubrey is the teacher. So he's the parent and the teacher. He has that combined role, but I feel sometimes as if I'm a homeschooler myself, in that when they come home from school, there is just so much that we still have to do. And I didn't get that as an example from my parents because we didn't find it necessary, and that was just not how I suppose our educational system was at that time, that the parents have to spend so much time and to really have to read the algebra book so that you could assist with the homework or to provide some guidance. So that's my view on that.
Aubrey, you, like your parents and grandparents, are totally different.
Good. Okay, back on. Absolutely. Listen, we couldn't be more different in terms of my father. My father had probably the greatest impact on my life in terms of presence than any other person on the planet. And my mother, an extremely close second. But what I've learned from my father, which is so incredibly unique, in that everything I've ever seen him do, all I had to do is do the exact opposite, and that's the recipe for success. Everything. He wasn't big on planning. I love to plan. Happy-go-lucky, nothing, no big deal on organization. That's a big thing. I love to credit. I can't stand credit. He loves the old people. He got a friend. He got some. He loves the numbers. I can't stand playing the numbers. He loved everything that he was really good at. I say, okay, let me use this as a guide. And we had candid conversation. Love him.
You made it a point to be different.
Absolutely. And I said to him so, because he was he was an excellent example for me. If I wanted to make sure I got it right, I just watch what he did and do the exact opposite. And we laugh about it all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
And you, Ray?
Yeah, I mean, my father had his issues. I love my father dearly, and my father always supported me. My mother was the rock in our family. She was the rock in our family. She made sure that, what was needed in terms of our well-being was done. My father, he would bring the check home, he would bring the grocery home, the food, the light was on, the water was on. He made sure school fees was paid. And I thought I was special because I was the youngest. I could get anything out of him that I wanted, except a motorbike when I was 15. But he was always there for me, as well as my grandparents. I didn't know my grandparents on my father's side, but I guess the impact of my mother's family was just it had a tremendous impact on me growing up. I mean, we went to our grandparents' house every single day. That's where all the mail was. That's where you go to pick up your bread on Saturday. That's where you go to, if you need a meal after school, that's where you go. We went to our grandparents. Every family function was at our grandparents' house. And, and that is why sometimes when I was young, I wanted to have a bunch of children. I wanted to have at least 10 children because I wanted that lifestyle that I was accustomed to and that camaraderie that my mother had with her siblings. So yeah, they were a very positive role model.
Douglas.
I mean, it's so nice to hear you guys speaking about your grandparents. Unfortunately, I did not grow up with grandparents. When I came into this world, I was told that, they were deceased, both paternal and maternal grandparents. But my influence was mostly with my parents. I think I spent quality time with my parents and most of all my siblings, because I'm the last male child for my parents, and I only have this one sister who's after me. And what's so influential with me in terms of my career choice is that I was surrounded in the neighborhood, to the west, to the east, to the north, and to the south, were teachers, and these were headmasters then. And most of my maternal and paternal family, most of them are teachers, and that had an impression on me, as a young child. And so all the way from primary school, that's all I wanted to become is a teacher. Even my father and my uncles were all policemen. And I remember after leaving high school, my mother took me to a cousin who was the Minister of Home Affairs, responsible for police. And straight away he said, you want to join the police force? I can start you today. And I said, no. And, my mother was very annoyed that, I turned down that even job too. But, I told her I just wanted to teach and nothing more. And the opportunity came. And, October the 2nd, 1974, when I just finished GC, I was called, to start with as I call it an assistant teacher at the school, the primary school that I attended in the village there. So that was the beginning of things. And all my years, I just moved from different locations, from the rural area to the urban areas. And that was it. So tremendous influence from my siblings and my relatives.
There seems to be a common thread through most of the men on the panel. So let's talk birds, the birds and the bees, gentlemen. How have we introduced the whole topic of sex, sexuality in a modern world, in a world where our kids are far more liberal than we were? The whole LGBT scenario, they're far more accepting than our parents, and certainly we were. How do you introduce and speak to them about the whole idea of sex, sexuality, and the like? Ray, you go first.
The
Ray,
wife.
you go first.
The wife.
I didn't hear that.
I said the wife. The wife deals with that aspect of things.
Whoa, really?
Yeah,
Even with your nieces and nephews?
Yeah, I had somebody do it. It was I had one of their aunts do it.
So you find that whole subject difficult?
I was a little brash back then. I remember once my niece came to me and said, her boyfriend cheated on her, and she wanted to go and visit this fella in Trinidad. I say, you going there? I said, if you go into Trinidad to visit somebody on the rebound, then when you come back, pack up your stuff and go. That was my reality back then. I wasn't entertaining that sort of stuff. And so, I think, nobody taught me about, what I didn't learn from school, I didn't know. What I didn't learn from Sanans in grade 5, well, in grade 11, my parents never had that discussion with me.
Don't we recognize that has to change, don't we?
Yes, and I think my wife is better able to deal with it. When it was Luke, we gave Luke a book, and we quizzed him on the book, and we had discussions with him about the book and what he learned from the book and all this stuff. But to sit down and talk to him about the birds and the bees, I think Kamala is better at that than I am, because I can be straight up with you. And sometimes things.
What would be wrong with that, though? What would be wrong if we can be straight up?
I don't know.
Is that not a good thing?
I don't know. Some of these men could probably help me. I may be a little too blunt and harsh.
Reality check. How about you, Aubrey? You much like Ray?
Aubrey's muted.
Yeah, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
You can hear me now? Okay, yeah, because I couldn't control the mute. I think CJ could. Yeah, no, for me, I have the advantage of my wife being in the medical field. So I call the meeting. Oh, you rest me, because I know my role. But I sit there because, I say to my children, the meeting ain't for you all. This for your daddy to understand some stuff. You're just in the room. You're just in the room. So y'all take the notes, but daddy really, really need to understand some stuff. So she happily approach it from a medical standpoint. She is not afraid to bring up anything, regardless of how embarrassing it is. No business is off limits. So I'm in the room as a participant. I'm always there, but Papa, I'm not the one. See, you got to know your role, Ray. I know mine just like you, buddy. I make sure it happens, but I'm leading that area.
Okay. And Patrick, any different?
Yes, as they get older, I think my wife will deal with the female in that regard. With the boys, I know that they had it at school in terms of family life, but when they talk things to me and ask me, I would just give them the response where that is concerned.
Okay. So you have that open dialogue with your boys.
Yes, but if they bring it up, I will, but I didn't just jump into it like that. If whenever, a situation that they feel that, for example, one of them they say, well, it's not growing, and when you with the boys, them and they go in the bathroom after games and so on, you feel so left out that everything is just small and it starts to say, that's the time you will go eventually by spring and sport. It's part of your developmental tasks, and you got to just wait, allow time to be the factor with all of that. So it's just like as a teacher, you know the stage you're at, and there are some developmental tasks that go with it, and so that when that time comes, you deal with it. So you just present itself and talk around it in that nature.
Y'all making me, I gotta ask, buddy, because y'all making me feel a little stranger, because I'm so comfortable with talking about these issues with my kids, and I'm trying to figure out something wrong with me. But help me out, please.
No, I had the birds and the bees talk with the boys. I did that, and it's interesting because
You had it with them both at the same time?
No, separately. Okay. Well, okay. Joshua, and we talk with Alex. Children can grow up in the same household and they can be so completely different. One of my sons, I don't even have to say which one, is extremely socially conservative. He has very conservative values. I don't know how that came about. But for instance, he has some doctrinal views. It's right or it's wrong. And so to him, he's in school, he'd come to me very concerned. Well, this boy had a pink backpack, and they want us to wear pink to identify with some issue. And this is a real concern to him. Or then if something comes up on the question of abortion, very conservative views on that. And so he said, well, this is not what you're supposed to be doing. And this is not what you're supposed to be doing. And these people are wrong on this. And I said, well, you could, yes, but you still have to talk through some things. But to him, it's right or it's wrong. Now, that wasn't the result of my talk, I hope. I don't think it was that. But he's developed in that fashion. My other son, you listen to him sometimes when he's talking with his friends, and this is very important to do, just as a little segue. But he's playing this online game, and he's using, like Aubrey and Patrick, he uses this headset, but you can hear his, so you don't hear his friends, but you hear his conversation if you pass the room and you listen in. And some of this conversation, you want to know what's on the other end. But it also teaches you, though, that you have to be engaged, because we have caught one or two instances, for instance, in terms of social media, of people who are masquerading as other people and are trying to reach out. And because I saw him dealing with something in a setting when I was looking at his laptop for something, and he had responded appropriately, but you found that there was somebody who was basically pretending to be a girl But when you read it, you realize this interest in, oh, send some photographs and this kind of thing, to realize that, well, no, it's not some 13 or 14-year-old girl, this is some predator. And so we've had to have those kinds of conversations too about that kind of reality, because, you know, your child may be in your home, but your child in your home with the internet is connected to everything globally, everything, and can be accessed by everyone as well. And so we've had to have those kinds of conversations just in terms of not only what is right and what is not, but also in terms of being careful of situations which may not be what they appear to be.
Now, careful now, because you say what is right and what is wrong. And I found that, you know, particularly that they have, what not only are they very expressive, but they also opine differently from the way we would have, particularly with what we see as perversion or perverted. Certainly a lesbian, a gay lifestyle, they are far, and if you dare to make any sort of derogatory statement, they look at you aghast, like, how could you? How could you say that? They don't see that as acceptable behavior. That's been my experience. And I just wondered if that's the case because of their exposure and how they relate to anything that we consider perverted or off or not normal.
But one of my sons is much more liberal than the next. That's why I made that reference to being conservative, these conservative values. And I query sometimes quite where these conservative values come from. But one of my sons, he does not brook that kind of thing at all. And so all of that lifestyle to him, oh, that's anathema. How could somebody, my other son is much more liberal. And that's why I say it's interesting. And again, it's because there's no one size fit all, no one approach. Children develop in different ways within the same setting, same set of social circumstances, same academic social circumstances, but they develop differently. They're how they think. And I see that clearly. But one, no, he is much more conservative than I ever considered myself to be. And the other is more accommodating of alternate views. And so that's a dynamic which I have to deal with from time to time.
Aubrey, you find the same with, because you know your kids are in that teenage age where they have their own opinions on things, and you find is your experience much like mine, that they are far more accepting? Let's unmute Aubrey, please. I just want to know how you.
I can't seem to unmute myself. Okay, yeah, absolutely. You see, I have very, very close relatives that are out of class, very close relatives, and my children are aware of them. So I have a very deliberate, respectful way, show them better than I can tell them how to be respectful and to treat people that are different, just different from us. So that's a lesson that is easier taught when it's so real around us, so very real around us. So and once again, you know, when I fall down, I have a wife who's equipped to address the issue appropriately and to guide my children in the way that requires them to be respectful and honest and to embrace, because we are all God's children, regardless of our differences. We're all God's children. So certainly it's
Right?
something that.
No, I agree. I think our system, our social system our social setting right now is it's changed a lot since we were growing up. I mean, like Aubrey said, you know, if there was someone you knew that was gay, or you just didn't know. I mean, that was held in the closet until, you know. Nowadays, you know, you have people in high school who profess to be, you know, they want to be men or they want to be women. And this is the exposure that our kids have today. They are exposed to these types of things. So, um, my view on it is, if my son comes to me one day and says, Daddy, this is my boyfriend, I mean, I'm not going to hate him for it. If that's what he want to be with, if that's the lifestyle he chooses, then it is what it is. I'm not gonna hate him. He's my child. I'm still gonna love him because of that. I have friends now who I never thought when I was growing up that I would have gay friends or lesbian friends. But everybody's out now and everybody doing their own thing, and these things, if it makes them happy, then so be it. But as long as you don't try to influence me in that lifestyle. um you know so my views are, my views have become very liberalized. I accept people for who they are. I think God taught us that we should love everybody despite their personal.
And you're completely comfortable if that were your son or daughter.
I have no choice, Philip. I have no
You
choice.
don't? Does he?
What
Panelist?
am I gonna do? I have no choice. I don't have to like the lifestyle, but I'm gonna love my son or daughter no matter what,
As we
and I'm
should.
gonna support them.
As we should. Yeah, as we should. Mr.
Yeah.
Douglas, your kids, um, because of the exposures in university and so on, any discussions about alternate lifestyles and their comfort or lack thereof with? And
I haven't had that kind of experience or, that kind of knowledge brought to me. It's just that I maintain, or if I correspond, especially like with Paul overseas there, I would ask, are you experiencing any struggles, and then when sometimes he can say, if anything, there is prayer. And that took me by surprise too, and so at least maybe he's aware of the biblical principles that we hold. But I haven't had that kind of situation. But I can safely say in the school situation that I was in, I was experiencing all of that kind of things where you see males of that tendency or the preference, and they would tell you these things. And as a teacher who profess Christianity, I will, engage them with biblical principles regarding that lifestyle. But it's up to them to, accept it or reject it. But the point is, I did my part then of saying what the Bible says about it.
I mean, this kind of lifestyle is rampant now in our high school system.
Yes, it is. It is. But
we have to prepare our kids for that kind of exposure.
Mm-hmm. I think.
Gentlemen, believe it or not, we've been going for about 2 hours.
Wow. Yeah.
At one point, we were concerned or wondering whether or not we'd be able to fill the stage for an hour and a half. And we've only touched the tip of the iceberg. So I'm going to ask you guys to sum up the roller coaster of fatherhood. It comes with immense joys, but there are also challenges at times. Sum up for us your experience of fatherhood. Ray, you go first.
Well, I can go first. I mean, I have learned a lot from all of you. You may not think that I watch people, but I do watch people, particularly.
Oh my God, Ray, you watching people?
I watch how people interact with their kids and with their wives and with their families, and so all of these experiences all make us better people. you know, and I
Indeed.
got a lot of different things from a lot of you. You know, my view, again, like I said, is I want to definitely show my kids that they are loved, that they can do whatever they want to do. There has to be some degree of discipline. And I want them to be able to come to me with any matter. One of the things that Bernard said that really, really hit home for me tonight is that, you know, each child is different as an individual, and you have to interact and react with each child in their own particular way that best suit them. And so, you know, my 6-year-old son is a lot different from my 9-year-old daughter. And so I have to relate to them, you know, in a different way. My son, he could sit on his Xbox all day, whereas my daughter, she is more engaging, always asking questions. And sometimes, you know, I have to be patient. I don't, you know, because sometimes when I come home from work, I don't feel like talking all day. I talk all day to work, and I got to come home and talk again. But I have to understand that this is her personality. And so you just have to, the key to all this tonight for me has been that every child is different, and we have to treat each one for their own particular likes, dislikes, ideals, etc.
Mr. Douglas,
And I will continue
last
to
word.
work with all of you wonderful fathers out there.
Mr. Douglas, any last words?
Yes, I think this has really been a very enlightening session, and I must say thanks to the organizers and for dealing with such a important topic at this time, because we are seeing where many homes are fatherless, and I've seen it, and and how it has affected um, homes, communities, and the nation as a whole. And what I can say that now that I'm even attending the ATI sessions, um, it has broadened and deepened my understanding of who am I really, and it's something that if we look at Jesus, who's our Lord and Savior, look at his attributes and his ministries that he did, and where I'm looking at parenting as a ministry or a vocation, what it has done for me, and I'm sensing where my faith, because I don't like to say that I am a successful, I don't like to use this word as successful parent, but I just want to be a more faithful parent, and that faithfulness, exude among my children and those who I come into contact with, because that was my hallmark in my teaching, where students would say, "Hey, Mr. Douglas, you are Christian, eh?" And I mean, I sometimes wouldn't tell them yes or no, but I try to be an example to them and let them carry on with that kind of lifestyle, to encourage them to strengthen their faith and trust in God. And I try to deal with a lot of love then and compassion. Thank you so
Aubrey,
much.
leave it with us.
I should like to
Leave that impression with us.
I should like to conclude as I've begun by saying to all of us that we need to embrace parenting very similar to how we should embrace life. Understanding that there is a process. The process is he, we, then me. Once you understand that life process, there is a balance to it all. That balance is listening, talking, and then action. That's your secret to life. That's the secret to parenthood. You got that? You believe me, it's a much smoother road to tackle. That's my conclusion.
Thank you, Aubrey. Bernard,
Philip,
your
I'd just
final
like I'd like to end by actually touching on something you said at the start when you said that in terms of this whole issue of parenting, that there really isn't a manual or a guidebook. And even those who would say that, oh, well, yes, there is, because you can use the Bible as your guidebook or your manual. And yes, the principles are there, but it is the application. And just like reading a manual about riding a bike, reading the manual doesn't do anything until you get on that bike and start pedaling. And that's the only way that you really learn. You may know the principles, but when it is, life is, as some people have said, is what happens while you're planning for some other things. You may have a plan. Another person said, you have a plan, you go into a fight. But when you get hit that first time, then the plan goes out of the window, then it suddenly becomes survival. And sometimes parenting, we feel like just survival, that we are lost and we really don't know, how do I apply this principle? I read this in the Bible, I read this in a book about parenting, but how do I apply this principle to this situation? My child just isn't listening to me, or I can't seem to get through to my child. So how do I convert what is written into an action plan which is sustainable and workable? And many times that's an issue of trial and error. And you could have some plans, but it's just what works. And every situation is always slightly different. And so I never try to cast aspersions on others, or how could you do that, or why do you do it in that fashion? Because maybe they find that that is what works. There are some wrong things, which undoubtedly none of us should do. But there are any number of right things which we can do, and not all of which that we have to deploy. And so it is what fits for your family. They're my very simple thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. When we began, we promised that you would have thought-provoking discussion, insightfulness, and excitement. I think that we have delivered exactly that. I thank our panelists for really pouring out of themselves all that they have experienced as fathers. And I leave you panelists and our guests with this word. A father is neither an anchor to hold us back, nor a sail to set it where we will go, but is a guiding life whose love shows us the way. Thank you, men, for an enjoyable evening. And I turn you back over to our president, Mr. C.J. McKenzie.
Well, thank you very much, Master Philip Gray. And listen, I need to thank each of the panelists for a very informative, educational, and thought-provoking, candid discussion on such an important topic in our society today. I think you gentlemen did very, very, very well. I just somehow wish this was video recorded or taped live on ZNS for the whole country to see. Y'all really did very, very well. And I think we in the audience got so many tips and nuggets and so much education, profound wisdom to be able to use some of those, or even to convey to others exactly what's needed to bring up excellent kids like the way you do. And I think, Philip, it withstanding everything, one thing to mention from our panelists is when you look at the kids that they have and how they carry themselves, we're talking the top of the line kids that you see in our country or in our society, in our community. These kids, the four panelists have top of the line in education, top of the line in sports, very active in so many church ministries. So I do have to give my hats off to our panelists, Mr. Patrick Douglas, Bernard Turner, Aubrey Sherman, and Ray Saunders, for allowing us to come inside and see exactly, how you do what you do at home. Being the man, like Aubrey said, the king of the castle. We really appreciate that. I also want to give kudos to our host, Mr. Philip Gray. You mentioned that you're going into business. I hope the business you're going into is one of being a talk show host, because that's what you need to consider. Excellent job, Master Philip Green. And I can't tell
Certainly ain't the athlete part.
I cannot wait until next week when we get into our other discussion. But I also want to thank the audience for chiming in. There's so many things we could be doing right now, but this is what makes a difference in our country, engaging in these same conversations. This is where it starts. I would like everyone to know and be invited that next week, Saturday, our second discussion of a series will be on entrepreneurship. We have some heavy hitters all set and ready to go. We will be talking about thriving in business today. So I want you to please spread the word, share it as we get into another engaging discussion and topic. I also want to thank our chaplain for opening us up in prayer, and also our technical support team led by Mr. Oliver Lynch. I also want to acknowledge the presence of our ACM Council President, Mr. Javon Moss, who has been very supportive and has been chiming in on the discussion. Javon, are you still there?
Yeah, yes. You need to release his mic.
Yes. So, Mr. Moss, at this time, if you'd like to give a remark, you're more than welcome to do.
So
thank you, President.
Thank you, CJ. Thank you, Holy Cross. Thank you for the invite and an exceptional event. As you see, I'm here with my son, and the discussion was very lively and provocative. Certainly an intellectual one, and the kind of conversations that we have to continue to have. One of the things that continued to cross my mind as the discussions was being delivered was around what happens to those people that don't have father figures in their life or fathers in their life. What happens in the single father home? So that was a piece that I thought we would, hopefully address, because certainly we're now not only challenged to be great fathers in our house, but certainly to lend support to other houses as well, and to others who, and the other thing too we need to do is encourage men who, have kids out there that are not doing what they need to do to, step it up. It starts with us, like you say. You have to be the example in your house. You have to be the example in your house, and then once you can do that, you can certainly challenge others to do better if they can, So thank you certainly for this opportunity. I enjoyed myself tremendously.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you all once again. So next week, Saturday, same time, we will have a even better and even more exciting. It's just going to keep getting better and better. Conversation on entrepreneurship, thriving in business today. So I want to thank everybody for their time, and see you all next week.
Good night, all. Thank you, CJ. Thank you, Philip. Thank you, guys. Ladies.
You guys were good. Panelists. Don't go. Panelists.
Yes,
Hold on. Panelists and executive members, hold on.
I thought a lot of discussion was excellent, but in this country, because we have so many single mothers, the way our panelists bring up their kids are so exemplary. It's almost like all we need is more men like our panelists. But in saying that, for whatever reason, some of the men are not engaging in their kids. We need to somehow find a way to reach out to more young kids, male and female, who don't have those type of fathers in the home. And just like the old saying goes, it takes a village to raise a child. And that's something we have to hold on to.
you guys feel? Panelists.
Pardon?
I'm here.
How did it flow for you?
No, I think it went, to me, I think it went very well. You kept it, you really kept it going on, look, over 2 hours. I mean, that just like that. And so
Smiling, right?
I think some of us, I think we all went over the minute and the 90 seconds.
Yes.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I mean, people had so much to offer in terms of the the responses to the question, and you just had to allow it to flow.
Yeah,
And
CJ was like, "Do we have enough questions?" I said, "Trust me. From what I could see, we can only use about 8 of them." But really, at one point, CJ was like, "You need to choose the top 6 questions because, yeah." I never had any doubt that there would be a flow of a reservoir of information to be disseminated and discussions and experiences. So, yeah. And from what I could see, I guess all of us would be able to better tell us. It looked like most people stayed engaged or on set for the entire thing.
Yeah, definitely. We went up to 33 participants on the call. Really, once it got up there, at no point did it go below 30. So we had about 30 persons active during the entire session.
Okay. Hmm.
I mean, I extended it to quite a lot of people, but it's who turn up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There will be a leadership session hosted by Mr. Edwards, the guy who adopted the C.I. Gibson Dream Chasers Club. This is his 3rd session, leadership session, next Saturday. So maybe open invitation for the boys at the club to sign in. It will be a Zoom thing too. And so next Saturday, I think CJ will forward the information in terms of the ID number and so forth.
Yeah, we have that ready.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's I think what we all have to do is a little be more intentional and do some target marketing.
Yeah.
As well. If each member of the club sends the message out to their people, and you almost have to be deliberate with it for several days so that it's something that sticks with them.
Sticks in the mind.
Send the flyer one day, you send the video one day, you send a note the next day. Keep it going. You could easily increase that number to 200%.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're gonna get there. I jot down some points and who to target and go from there. And sometimes you still got to make that phone call.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, my biggest challenge, CJ, from a logistics standpoint, is that I think Lynch was saying that there were questions on the chat.
In the chat room.
And when I scrolled through, I didn't really see it. And then I saw you saying the same thing, that you didn't really see the questions. So, because I would have wanted to pluck out one from the audience.
Yes, that would have been good,
Yeah, there were a couple of questions that came on the back end. Mm-hmm. Lynch is trying to come in now. There were a couple of questions that came on the back end coming to the end, but when Lynch said questions in the chat, I actually didn't see any at that point.
Yeah, nor did I. And so I think let's wait till he comes on. Yeah, he's on.
He's on.
Yeah. Oliver. We can't see you.
Hey, how are you?
Okay, good. We just making sure.
Aubrey's mic is muted too.
Yeah.
Way back to Uncle Philip.
I saw some of the questions, and I was attempting to answer, but I didn't realize that I was answering, my response was going to Captivia 1052, whoever that was.
Oh, someone's asking personally.
Right, I didn't realize it was I thought I was responding back to you, CJ, and I responded only to Captivia 1052, whoever that is. I don't know if that was.
Hey,
all
Aubrey,
night
that was
all night
interesting
it was
because that person messaged me and said, "You're not Aubrey Sherman III. You're Aubrey Sherman Jr."
Junior,
So I
that's
think
right.
it was your family member.
I don't know who it is either, but no, that's an error that my son made. Yeah, I'm
They
Junior.
clearly know you well.
That's right. But boy, I thought I was answering you, CJ, and messaging them.
You were saying, Lynch, before you got on, that in the panel group, you had indicated that there were questions in the chat. But when I pulled it up on the screen and on my phone, I couldn't see the questions. Then CJ said that he couldn't see it either. So perhaps what we can do next week, my thought is pull the question out and put it in our chat, because I would always be able to get it there, so we could plug in questions from the audience.
Okay. One of the questions was answered. Is Javon? So I private message you in Zoom. I send you a private message in Zoom, but I'm glad he was able to make a remark at the end, so he voiced his opinion.
Yeah, because so the next question was, what do we do? What do we do to help engage more fathers in their homes?
Our fathers, homes that do not have any fathers.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
But that was a good question, though. But
Yeah,
I must commend all the panelists, and I must commend you, Philip. You did a good job. You did an awesome job, guys.
The host is very
CJ,
important. Keep it moving.
Now that you have recorded this thing, CJ, what do you intend to do with this recording now? If you can get some expert people to,
you did record it.
Put it properly and, edit it, and
you will get funding from it, Douglas.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. If